Can I be honest? I hate this build. Sorry. I gotta be honest about it. But I think this is definitely what people are going to be trying out. So I built it the way that I think that people are going to build it. And I'm trying to maximize damage for those people who want to try this out. One of the few changes that are legitimately coming to the Necromancer, which is already on a good spot, is that they're looking to better tune Raised Skeletal Mage for its damage output. So what does this mean? Your typical Fishy Mancer is probably going to try out maxing Skeletal Mage and eking out more damage from this source. So the build in its entirety is going to be max Raised Skeleton, Skeletal Mastery, max Skeletal Mage. We're also going to be putting in enough points into lower res so that with our plus to skill, we're sitting on minus 64%. And then because we're using Skeletal Mage and because we're using lower res instead of amplified damage on this build, we're going to be maxing Fire Golem as well. There are two slant buffs to this. One, since we're using lower res, we're going to be increasing the damage of Fire Golem, and there's a greater chance that the monsters will be broken, considering we are also using Infinity on our Mercenary. And two, Holy Fire Aura, as well as all Paladin auras, are going to see an increase in damage per tick based off of distance to the monster. So the closer you are to your monster, the more damage you're going to do. Put that all together, and what you get is prioritizing Fire Golem finally as an option on the Summon Necromancer over the much more common Clay Golem and Iron Golem. So even though we're using Beast, which is going to speed up your Skeleton Mages as fast as possible, they are taking 30 frames per attack. That is over a second per attack. But this is the best that we can do right now to maximize their damage output. The rest of your kit is Enigma, so you can Telestomp without reservation, Shaco with Magic Find, Amaras, Homunculus with Eldrune to reach max block, War Traps for Magic Find, 2 Stones of Jordan, Arachnid's Mesh, and a Mage Fist. Now, obviously, you can use Trangs to get +1 to curses, but at the skill level that we're currently at, +1 to curses actually doesn't get you any benefits at all. So you might as well have Mage Fist on, which will increase your skill level on Corpse Explosion, which will increase the radius when you explode a monster's body. We're using a defensive merc, so Holy Freeze Aura. Why would we be doing that? Shouldn't you have Might Aura up? And normally, yes, you should absolutely have Might Aura up. I'm building this as if someone is trying to maximize the potential of Raised Skeleton Mage. And if you're trying to raise the potential of Skeleton Mage, their missiles need to be able to hit stuff. And for their missiles to hit stuff, they need to be CC'd in some way, shape, or form. Now, the good news about doing the build this way is that you still are just a Fishy Mancer. So your major damage output is still going to be Corpse Explosion. Your lower resistance is going to increase the fire damage of your Corpse Explosion, so you're still going to get pretty good clear speed on that, as well as still having the availability of all of your revives, all of your raised skeletons to have tanks, and your mercenary with an infinity is still going to be pumping out really good damage. So what do I think you do on a build like this? Ironically enough, the core of this build, which is the Fishy Mancer, does everything good. You kind of can't mess up on this build. If you can telestomp a mercenary in and get them to kill a single monster, lower res and then Corpse Explosion will blow up just about anything on the screen, at least on players 1 difficulty. And then if you're trying to do stuff like Ubers or kill act bosses, you can obviously go revive a massive army of crushing blow monsters like Urdars or Thorn Hulks, and then you're basically tuned in to be able to kill anything that you want. This is probably the only build that I legitimately believe people are going to try out and eventually throw to the side. Realistically, the inclusion of Raised Skeleton Mage, why is Raised Skeleton Mage so difficult to actually use here? You have to hand tailor the skeletons that you're using. So obviously lightning damage is the easiest to break in the game. Only want to have a maximum of 1 poison skeleton mage, and this is only for fighting bosses because multiple poison skeleton mages will just keep overriding their poison and not do any additional damage. You only really want to have 1 cold mage because this is the lowest non-poison damage that you can get, and having more of them isn't really going to increase your total CC. And then if the difference is between fire or lightning, lightning just does strictly more damage as well as hits less immunities. So you are going to quite literally need to keep spawning skeletal mages until you have 1 poison, 1 cold, and 14 lightning mages, depending on where you're farming. And then you get to go play the game. On top of that, Fire Golem probably isn't going to do damage. There's just no real way to get this thing to do enough damage to actually be worthwhile. It is a good tank because it absorbs fire damage, but in Hell, fire is the second hardest to break immunity in the game. So even though you're absorbing damage, you're probably not doing any damage to any targets. Realistically, even if you want to just buff up Raised Skeletal Mage just for them to do more damage and to have more of them, you're still going to be using a Clay Golem until you can replace an Insight Iron Golem. And you really want to be putting these points over into Corpse Explosion instead of Lower Resist, because 1 point amplified damage is going to cover the screen, and you just want to be able to max that radius on Corpse Explosion as much as you can. If you end up trying out this build and I am completely wrong, and obviously we're going to be testing this come PTR time, I will gladly put out a revision to this video or put out a response saying I was wrong. I'm so excited that people finally get to enjoy their Raised Skeletal Mages, and I hope for all of the Skelly Mage fanboys out there that you eventually get your day. But as it stands right now, I just don't think that this really warrants the major change to Fishymancer that it would require. Just to reiterate though, it's still a Fishymancer, it still has Corpse Explosion, it still maxes out FCR on an Enigma, and it still has a powerful Mercenary. So you're just going to be able to do whatever you want because the Necromancer is busted.